back to the Road Goes Ever On and On South Florida and Keys adventure. So, in episode 1, we looked at two national parks, Biscayne and the Everglades. We also hiked some trails, explored some visitor centers, and also went on an airboat ride through the Everglades itself. So, in this episode, we're going to head into the actual Keys. We'll mostly be looking at Key Largo, Islamorada, and Key West, the most famous of the Keys. But before we do that, now seems as good a time as any to tell you about some food I recommend trying while you're down there, because what's more important than figuring out what kind of food you're going to eat on a trip? So the first thing I want to tell you about is conch. Conch is absolutely amazing, but you have to get in the Keys because I tried it here back home and, well, it just does not taste nearly as good. I tried 3 different types of conch dishes: conch fritters, which the Keys are famous for, conch soup, and then just plain grilled conch. They were all very good, but the conch fritters are the most famous, and they are really good. They're kind of like a crab cake or a stuffed mushroom, something like that. I also really wanted to try stone crab while I was down there, but unfortunately it was out of season. I believe the season is from fall to May, and I went in June, so I just missed it. And finally, of course, you'll want to try key lime pie because, well, you're in the Keys. And normally I'm not a big fan of key lime pie, but it does taste better down there. But without further ado, let's go ahead and head into the Keys. The first undersea park in the U.S., John Pennekamp Coral Reef State Park, encompasses approximately 70 nautical square miles. While the mangrove swamps and tropical hammocks in the park's upland areas offer visitors a unique experience, it is the coral reefs and their associated marine life that bring most visitors to the park. Many enjoy the view of the reef from a glass-bottom boat tour, but visitors can get a closer look by scuba diving or snorkeling. One of the most famous spots is the Christ of the Abyss statue, which you can see when you scuba dive or snorkel, but you're not guaranteed to be able to see it because the captains of the boats will take you to whichever spots are least crowded, and it also depends on the weather conditions. Canoeing and kayaking through the park's waters are also popular activities. Fishing is permitted in designated areas, and you can also walk on short trails, picnic, or swim at the beach.
Gonna regret this.
It's huge. Right here. You're jumping now. Just
As you've probably already guessed, my Canon camera is not underwater, so not only can I not take videos, but I also bought a cheap underwater photo camera, which turned out to be absolutely terrible. I got the pictures back, and what a waste of money, so don't buy any cheap underwater cameras. So unfortunately I don't have any footage from underwater, but I did manage to snag a quick interview with Mr. Clifton about some of the things we saw down there.
Some of the animals, now you were on the reef, stalking the reef. One of the
biggest things we saw was the dome of the coral, brain coral. You see it really, really well. And also there were some dead spots in it too. You can see the dead spots. Some of the fish that I saw were parrotfish, stock-like parrots. We saw those, the blue parrots, kind of large. And also we saw some barracudas, some sea fans. And the sea fan is a type of coral that's called a soft coral, and it bends. You can see it bending with the waves, but it's a coral also. But those are mainly the animals that we saw. Some did see a black-tip reef shark and some type of stingray. I didn't see the stingray. This is the red. See them?
Oh,
and now
yes.
they mixed in with the black. So the red and the black. Now the red can tolerate saltier water. The black usually is a little bit higher up. It can't tolerate quite as much. And then the white is higher up in elevation. It tolerates the least amount of salt. So this is a red mangrove root here. I don't see any of the seed pods on it, but we may as we move on down a little bit further. But look at this. This is awesome. Look at the gnarled roots here. Now this goes all the way down into the water, and it's a wonderful place to lay eggs. Why would an animal want to lay its eggs, a fish, down in those roots there? What do you think?
Big birds can't really get in.
It's a good place to hide. The babies can hide until they get a little bit bigger, then they can swim out. But see now, the black is starting to come up, but it also is mixed in with red. Come on down this way, guys. I want you to see the live polyps.
There's the big crabs.
Live polyps.
Live polyps.
Look back here. See the little polyps? See the tentacles sticking up?
See, guys?
See there? That's how small, and they can be smaller than that.
They're so cute.
For the reef.
Yeah, this is
the reef.
There's the brain
I
colony.
see shrimp.
That's the reef.
See the little...
There's shrimp in here.
Yep, there are lots of different.
See how they move?
There's hermit crabs.
And this is a live reef. It has to have a certain kind of light.
Probably break off like a big piece of dead stuff with something on the end of it.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Instead of just
We'll take a minute and look all the way around, okay, and then see.
There's a crab.
Now, there's another one back there. This is Florida spiny lobster. This is not a Maine lobster. The main difference are the big front claws. The Maine lobster, they have a pincher claw and a crusher claw. And so when you eat these, you're only eating the abdomen, like a crawfish. It's just a giant crawfish is what it is. And there are certain seasons. In July, there's a season lobster season, and they have a little stick with a hook on it. They can reach in there and snag them and pull them out. So there is a limit to the lobsters you can catch.
Our next stop on our trip to the Keys is Islamorada, which lies about 45 minutes from Key Largo and is still quite a ways from Key West. On the way down to Islamorada, you may see this giant statue of a Florida lobster. It's not on Islamorada, if I remember correctly, but it's outside of a store on the way there. And since there's only one main road through the Keys, you can't really miss it. Our first stop in Islamorada, of two main stops, is the History of Diving Museum, which is a famous spot in the Keys and is kind of like a must-see attraction while you're in the Keys. So the museum is dedicated to collecting, preserving, displaying, and interpreting artifacts, antiques, books, documents, photographs, and oral history relative to the history of diving. And also has lots of meetings and informative speeches that you can attend there as well. Some of them are related to scuba diving, others are not. I attended one about coral reefs, which is quite interesting. Anyway, it tells the international story of man's attempts to explore, understand, and venture under the sea. It also celebrates the special role that South Florida and the Keys played in this story. Some things that I'd like to point out really quickly are one of the first things you'll see, which is Dr. Haley's diving bell. It was one of the first apparatuses used underwater in which people would stand and an air pocket would be created, and then they'd be put under the water. Probably wasn't very comfortable, and they couldn't go very deep with it. You also see some scuba gear. It mostly focuses on the diving helmets and such from around the world, and throughout time you'll see some that look like space helmets and others that look, well, really old. But they do focus on scuba gear just a little bit because, of course, that's very commonplace nowadays. You don't see many people with scuba helmets walking around anymore, or swimming, I should say. So, just an important milestone in the history of going underwater. And then some non-scuba gear things that you might see are the rostrum of a saw shark. You don't see those every day. And then you also see some tributes to Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, one of my favorite books of all time. You'll see a replica of Captain Nemo's The Nautilus submarine, one of the most famous vehicles of all time. And then you'll see some old copies of the book itself. So overall, the Florida Keys Diving Museum, great place to visit. You have to stop there if you go down to the Keys. And I think everyone in your family will have a great time. We're here at Robbie's Marina here on Islamorada or Islamorada, depending on how you want to pronounce things. And today we're going to be feeding the large tarpon that are here. There's literally dozens of them in the pool, and you can get buckets of smaller fish to feed them. And then we're going to be going out in the boat and doing some fishing. So let's go and see what kind of fun there is around here. Look at that big one right there. There's a big one. Throw it over there. Oh, wow.
Nice one. Bring it over.
Yeah. Our final stop on this trip is Key West, Florida. Of course, it's the last of the Keys, and at the end of it, you will find mile marker 0. And one of the places we'll be visiting is the southernmost point of the continental United States, where it's only 90 miles of ocean that separates you from Cuba. Our first stop, however, our first stop of 2, I didn't stay here very long, mostly because of the environment, which I wasn't too crazy about. It's definitely for party animals, and that's not quite my thing. But anyway, the first stop will be the Key West Butterfly Museum, and it's really cool. It only takes about 45 minutes to go through, but it is amazing. There's butterflies and all kinds of exotic birds and plants, so it's a really neat stop, and I think the whole family is going to enjoy it. So I definitely recommend it, and here's some footage from there. thanks for tuning in to these 2 episodes of The Road Goes Ever On and On. We saw all kinds of cool stuff in South Florida and the Keys. I highly recommend a trip down there. There's way more to do even than just what you saw in these videos. There's plenty for everybody. So, thanks for tuning in. We'll hit the road again soon. And just remember, the road goes ever on and on. Wow, I made it all the way to mile marker 0. But does that mean the road has ended?